Okay, so you know how sometimes like a news story grabs you?
Uh-huh.
And it's not just the headlines, it
Yeah.
kind of makes you wonder, like, what's the why behind all this?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
That's what happened to me with this BioLab fire
Mm.
in Conyers, Georgia. I mean,
Yeah.
a chemical plant fire visible from 30 miles away.
Yeah.
That's like a disaster movie
Yeah.
waiting to happen.
Yeah.
But the more I read your sources,
Right.
the more it's clear that this is about so much more than just a fire.
Yeah. You're right to be concerned.
Yeah.
These types of industrial fires are thankfully rare,
Yeah.
but when they do occur, the impact can be really far-reaching.
Right.
And what makes this incident particularly striking is that it's the third fire at this same BioLab facility in just 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So that's a pretty alarming pattern.
Totally.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's like once is unfortunate,
Right.
twice makes you wonder, but 3 times.
Yeah, 3 strikes, you're out.
Okay, something's up.
Yeah.
So let's rewind for a second,
Yeah.
make sure we're both on the same page about what went down in Conyers.
Absolutely. So the fire broke out early on a Sunday morning
Okay.
at the BioLab facility. And initially, firefighters thought they had it under control.
Okay.
But then it reignited,
Oh, no.
creating this enormous plume of smoke that was visible for miles.
Wow.
And you can imagine the chaos, thousands of people had to be evacuated.
Jeez.
They had to shut down a major highway.
Wow.
So not your average Sunday morning, right?
Definitely not.
And you know what really gets me?
What's that?
There were still employees inside when that fire reignited. Talk about a terrifying situation.
Right. And that detail immediately raises questions about the plant's emergency protocols and their safety procedures.
Right.
And it's really difficult to comment definitively without knowing the specifics of what their procedures were.
Right.
But it does highlight a critical area that investigators are undoubtedly going to scrutinize.
Okay.
Because when you have multiple incidents like this at the same facility, it often points to systemic issues
Okay.
rather than just a series of unfortunate events.
Systemic issues like what?
Well, think about it. Was there some kind of breakdown in communication? Were safety protocols not being followed, or maybe they weren't enforced adequately?
Right.
Were employees appropriately trained for emergencies like this? These are just some of the questions that investigators are going to be asking to try and understand what led to this incident and how to prevent something similar from happening again.
Okay.
But here's where things get even more interesting.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
Okay, lay it on me.
What's the twist?
The sprinkler system, the one that's supposed to suppress fires,
Yeah.
it actually reacted with the chemical involved and made the fire worse.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Hold up, the fire extinguisher caused more fire?
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy detail.
That's like the opposite of helpful.
Yeah.
What kind of chemical does that?
That's where we need to talk about TCCA,
Okay.
which stands for trichloroisocyanuric acid.
See, now that sounds more like a chemistry exam
Right.
than something that should be bursting into flames.
Yeah.
Break it down for me. What is this TCCA stuff?
Okay, so TCCA, it's basically the main ingredient in most pool chlorine tablets.
Really?
You've probably used them yourself.
Get out of here. So this whole massive fire was fueled by something I used to keep my pool clean.
You got it.
You're kidding?
Not kidding.
You're telling me those little white tablets I toss in my pool were at the heart of this massive industrial fire? How does that even happen?
Yeah, it's all about the chemistry. You see, TCCA is designed to dissolve slowly in large volumes of water, like
Yeah.
in your pool, right?
Yeah.
And as it dissolves, it releases chlorine gradually to keep your pool sanitized.
Right.
But when TCCA comes into contact with a limited amount of water,
Okay.
like what happened with that malfunctioning sprinkler system,
Yeah.
it creates a very different and very dangerous reaction.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture, but I need a visual here. What does this dangerous reaction actually look like? Help me understand why this stuff went from pool cleaner to fire hazard.
Okay, so imagine like mixing baking soda and vinegar.
Okay.
The classic volcano experiment,
Yeah.
you get that fizzing eruption.
Right.
It's similar with TCCA and limited water. That reaction generates a lot of heat.
Okay.
And that heat can become intense enough to ignite the chemical itself and anything flammable that happens to be around it.
Wow. So it's not just that it catches fire, it kind of creates its own firestorm.
Exactly.
Suddenly, pool chemicals sound a whole lot more intimidating.
Right.
But hold on, I feel like we're just scratching the surface here. Didn't you say this wasn't the first TCCA incident at this BioLab facility?
You are absolutely right. Back in 2020, the same facility had another incident, also involving TCCA. That one released hazardous fumes and forced evacuations.
Really?
So yeah, this latest fire is not an isolated incident.
Okay, that's it. 2 TCCA incidents in just a few years. What is going on at BioLab? Are they just playing fast and loose with this stuff? This is where I start to get concerned, you know?
Yeah,
What's being done to hold them accountable?
that's the critical question. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, is now involved,
Okay.
and they'll be investigating the incident, including analyzing samples of that smoke plume.
Okay.
And this will help them to determine the extent of the risk posed by the fire, both to the environment and the community.
So the EPA is on the case. What does that actually mean, though? Do they have the power to actually do something if they find BioLab was negligent? Can they prevent something like this from happening again?
Yeah, they do have some teeth. The EPA has the authority to enforce environmental regulations, and they can issue fines or even shut down facilities if they're found to be in violation.
Sure.
The outcome of their investigation will likely depend on a number of factors, including the severity of the incident, any previous violations by BioLab, and the specific regulations in place for storing and handling chemicals like TCCA.
So this is where it gets really interesting for the people of Conyers, right? We've got this fire, this chemical that's not as innocent as it seems, a company with a questionable track record, and now the EPA is sniffing around. This is about more than just a fire at this point. What are the long-term consequences here?
You're right, this incident has far-reaching implications. For starters, there's the immediate impact on the community. Think about the thousands of people forced from their homes, schools shutting down, even something as simple as Sunday church services being canceled because of the smoke.
It's easy to gloss over those details when you're just reading a news report, but that's people's lives being disrupted, their sense of security shaken.
Exactly. And then there are potential long-term health effects from exposure to the smoke and chemicals,
Right.
which we don't fully understand yet. This incident raises serious questions about how we ensure the safety of communities located near industrial facilities.
This whole situation really highlights the importance of transparency and accountability, wouldn't you say? Transparency and accountability.
Right, yeah.
If this had happened once, you could maybe chalk it up to bad luck.
Right.
But 3 times in 7 years. At some point, you got to ask, like, what's being done to prevent this from happening again? And not just in Conyers, but everywhere.
Right. You've hit on a crucial point. The BioLab fire, while obviously a local event, it really shines a light on a much bigger issue.
Yeah.
And that's this balance between industrial operations and the safety of these communities that are often located, just a stone's throw away
Yeah.
from these kinds of facilities.
It's easy to feel powerless in situations like this, but we're not completely off the hook, are we? What can we as individuals actually do to make a difference? I mean, I'm not a chemist or an EPA investigator or anything.
You don't have to be.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, I always say.
Right.
Start by just learning about the facilities in your own community.
Okay.
What are they handling? What are their safety records? You can find a lot of this information online, often on the EPA's website or through your local government resources.
So do your homework be informed? What else? What about contacting our elected officials? Does that actually make a difference?
Absolutely. Let your representatives know that you care about industrial safety and environmental regulations. Support policies that prioritize community safety and that hold these companies accountable.
Right.
When accidents happen, your voice matters more than you think.
It's easy to feel like these things are out of our control, but you're right. We have a voice and we can use it.
Exactly.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
Good.
I started out thinking this was just a local news story.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, whoa, what's happening in my own backyard?
And that's exactly the point. We often don't think about these risks until something dramatic like this happens. But the reality is that many of us live in close proximity to industries that are handling potentially hazardous materials.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's really crucial to be aware, to ask those questions, and to advocate for our own safety and the well-being of our communities.
Well said. This BioLab fire, as tragic as it was, really serves as a stark reminder that we just can't afford to be complacent when it comes to industrial safety. We've got to stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
Couldn't agree more.
And there you have it, folks.
We've gone from a dramatic fire in Conyers, Georgia, all the way to the importance of community action.
Right.
Remember, knowledge is power. Don't wait for a headline to start asking questions about what's happening in your own backyard.
Right.
Stay curious, stay informed, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.